The message arrived before sunrise, when the city was still quiet and the world felt paused between night and morning. Daniel Mercer was awake, staring at the ceiling, already restless. His phone buzzed on the bedside table. One short vibration. One line of text, that was all it took. "They know. It was you." Daniel sat up at once. His breath caught, sharp and shallow. The room felt suddenly smaller, the air heavy. He read the message again, slower this time, hoping the words might change if he stared long enough. They didn't. His fingers tightened around the phone as his mind raced ahead, filling the silence with questions he didn't want answered. Outside, rain tapped softly against the window, steady and cold. Daniel swung his legs out of bed and stood there, barefoot on the floor, trying to steady himself. The sender was Marcus Hale, his best friend, his business partner, the man Daniel trusted more than anyone else. For 5 years, they had built everything together. Daniel dressed quickly and left his apartment before the sun fully rose. The streets were empty, washed clean by the rain. Traffic lights changed for no one. As he drove, memories surfaced without permission, late nights at the office, shared meals, plans spoken with confidence and hope. Marcus had always been the bold one. Daniel had been careful, methodical. Together, they balanced each other. Or so Daniel believed. When he reached the office building, the parking lot was nearly empty. He parked in his usual spot and sat there for a moment, hands on the steering wheel, listening to the engine tick as it cooled. Something felt wrong, deeply wrong. Inside, the lobby lights were on, but the space felt hollow. The security guard avoided Daniel's eyes as he passed. That was the first sign. The second came when Daniel tried to log into his computer and found his access denied. He frowned, tried again. Same result. A cold sensation crept up his spine. He walked down the hallway toward Marcus's office. The door was closed. The nameplate was still there, polished and neat. Daniel knocked once. No answer. He knocked again, harder. Silence. His phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't Marcus. It was an automated email from the bank. Subject line, account alert. Daniel opened it with shaking hands. The words blurred together, restricted access. Irregular activity pending investigation. His heart began to pound. He checked another email, then another. Messages from clients, from vendors, from their legal advisor, all asking the same question. What's going on? By mid-morning, the truth came in pieces, each one heavier than the last. Funds had been moved. Contracts signed. Decisions made in Daniel's name. Everything pointed back to him. The signatures matched, the approvals were logged. On paper, it was airtight. Except Daniel hadn't done any of it. He called Marcus again, straight to voicemail. He texted. No reply. He sent an email, then another. Still nothing. At noon, 2 men from compliance arrived. Polite, calm, firm. They asked Daniel to step into a conference room. They asked questions that felt like accusations. Daniel answered honestly, carefully, but he could see it in their eyes. They had already made up their minds. Until this is resolved, one of them said, "We'll need you to refrain from contacting clients." Refrain. As if this were a misunderstanding that would clear itself up. By the time they left, Daniel felt hollow. The office buzzed around him, people whispering, glancing his way when they thought he wasn't looking. He gathered his things. Slowly, each movement deliberate, as if moving too fast might cause everything to collapse completely. He stepped outside and let the rain soak his jacket. He didn't care. His phone buzzed again. Marcus, at last. Daniel answered instantly. "Where are you?" he demanded. Marcus's voice was calm. To calm. "Daniel, listen. Things got complicated." "Complicated," Daniel said. "My accounts are frozen. People think I stole from my own company." There was a pause, just long enough to feel intentional. I warned you, Marcus said. You wouldn't move fast enough. I did what had to be done. The words landed hard. You framed me, Daniel said quietly. I protected the business, Marcus replied. Your name was already on most of the approvals. It made sense. Daniel felt something break inside him then. Not loudly, not all at once. It's just a slow, painful crack spreading through everything he believed. We were partners, Daniel said. Marcus agreed. But partnerships change. Before Daniel could respond, the call ended. That was it. No apology, no explanation, just finality. The days that followed blurred together. Lawyers replaced conversations, meetings became interrogations. Marcus stayed out of reach, communicating only through official channels. Every attempt Daniel made to clear his name was met with careful resistance. At night, Daniel replayed everything. Every choice, every moment he had trusted Marcus without question. He remembered the early days when they worked out of a rented space with broken chairs and borrowed equipment. Marcus had talked about ambition like it was oxygen. Daniel had believed in him. That belief now felt like a weakness. One evening, Daniel sat alone in his apartment. Documents spread across the table. Bank statements, contracts, email chains. The truth was there, buried but visible to anyone willing to look closely. Marcus hadn't acted on impulse. This had been planned. Slowly, patiently, with precision. Daniel's hands trembled as he pieced it together. Marcus had anticipated every safeguard, every objection Daniel might raise. He had prepared for this moment long before it arrived. A strange calm settled over Daniel as the realization fully formed. Marcus didn't think he had done anything wrong. In Marcus's mind, Daniel was an obstacle, a risk, someone who would slow progress, question decisions, insist on caution when boldness was needed. Marcus had convinced himself that removing Daniel was necessary, even kind in a twisted way. That understanding hurt more than the betrayal itself. Daniel stood and walked to the window, looking out over the city lights. Somewhere out there, Marcus was continuing his life, confident and untouched. Daniel felt the weight of it pressed down on his chest. He had lost his reputation, his work, his future. And Marcus had taken it all without raising his voice. In that quiet moment, as the city moved on without him, a new feeling took shape inside. Daniel, it wasn't rage, not yet. It was resolve. He wouldn't beg. He wouldn't disappear. Marcus had chosen silence and shadows. Daniel would choose clarity. And whatever it took to reclaim his name, he would see it through. Daniel did not wake up angry. He woke up focused. The shock had faded, replaced by a sharp, steady awareness that followed him from the moment his eyes opened. The ceiling above him looked the same, but his life no longer did. He lay still for a few seconds, listening to his own breathing, then stood and began the day with purpose. He cleaned his apartment first, not because it was dirty, but because he needed order. Each folded shirt, each cleared surface, gave him a sense of control he no longer felt in the outside world. When he finished, he sat at the table and opened his laptop. The screen glowed like a challenge. He began where Marcus had taught him to begin years ago. Start with facts, not feelings. Daniel downloaded old files from personal backups. Emails, drafts, notes he had never thought would matter again. He worked fast, skipping meals, drinking coffee that grew cold beside him. Hours passed without him noticing. He wasn't chasing revenge yet. He was chasing truth. At first, the evidence looked scattered. Then patterns appeared. Transactions signed late at night. Approval sent when Daniel was out of the country. Language Marcus used when Daniel questioned risks. Subtle pressure. Gentle reminders that time was running out. Daniel saw now how carefully Marcus had shaped every conversation. Each discovery brought a surge of energy, followed by doubt. Was this worth it? Daniel closed his laptop and leaned back. His mind drifted to the early days again, but this time with clearer eyes. Marcus had always wanted more, bigger deals, faster growth. Daniel had believed caution was strength. Marcus had seen it as fear. The thought unsettled him. Marcus had not acted out of cruelty. He had acted out of belief. Belief that he alone could carry the vision forward. Belief that Daniel would only get in the way, that made the betrayal harder to swallow. There was no simple villain to hate. That night, Daniel dreamed of standing in a courtroom with no voice. Every time he tried to speak, the room faded and Marcus stood alone in the light, confident and calm. Daniel woke before dawn, heart racing, his decision still unfinished. The next day, he met with an old colleague, someone who had left the company early. They spoke in a quiet cafe, voices low. The colleague hesitated, then admitted something Daniel had long suspected. Marcus had been laying groundwork for months, quietly shifting trust away from Daniel. Subtle comments, private meetings, nothing obvious, just enough to reshape perception. Daniel thanked him and walked out into the street, the weight in his chest heavier now. Marcus had rewritten the story while Daniel wasn't looking. That evening, Daniel stared at his phone, hovering over Marcus's contact. He could call. Demand? Answers. But he knew what would happen. Marcus would stay calm, rational, persuasive. He always did. Daniel needed distance, not noise. Days turned into weeks. The investigation moved slowly. Daniel's savings shrank. Friends stopped calling, as often. Some avoided him completely. Others tried to help but didn't know how. Every quiet moment became an invitation for doubt. Was walking away the smarter choice? Daniel imagined starting over in another city. A smaller life, fewer risks. But each time he considered it, something tightened inside him. Walking away would mean Marcus's version of events would stand. That felt worse than failure. He returned to the evidence with renewed intensity. He built timelines, cross-checked data, verified sources. The work consumed him, slept in short bursts. He lost track of days. The outside world faded as his focus sharpened. Still, the question followed him. What was he becoming? Late one night, Daniel found a message Marcus had sent months earlier, buried deep in an archive. It was a casual note, written like advice. Sometimes the hardest part of leadership is making choices others won't understand. Daniel stared at the words for a long time. In Marcus's mind, this had been leadership. Necessary, clean. The realization shifted something in Daniel. Revenge no longer felt simple. Exposing Marcus would ruin him. Yes, but it would also confirm Marcus's belief that Daniel was emotional, reactive, unable to let go. Daniel pushed his chair back and stood. The room felt too small. He needed air. Outside, the city hummed. People hurried past, absorbed in their own lives. None of them knew who Daniel was or what he had lost. The thought was strangely freeing. He didn't want Marcus destroyed. He wanted the truth to exist. That difference mattered. Daniel met with a legal advisor privately, not to attack, but to understand options. The advisor listened carefully, asked direct questions, and confirmed what Daniel already suspected. The evidence was strong, but any public move would be messy. Reputations rarely recovered cleanly. That night, Daniel weighed every outcome. Silence would protect his peace, but erase his name. Exposure would restore truth, but deepen the damage. Sleep came late. When it did, his dreams were quieter. The next morning, Daniel made a decision. He would not rush. He would not act out of anger. He would let the facts speak without adding his voice to the noise. If justice came, it would come without spectacle. He organized everything into a single file. Clear, simple, undeniable. No commentary. No accusations. It's just a trail of decisions leading back to Marcus. As he worked, Daniel felt something ease inside him. The pressure that had driven him began to lift. This was no longer about winning or losing. It was about balance. Before closing the file, Daniel hesitated. One click could change everything. He imagined Marcus's reaction when the truth surfaced. Shock, anger, denial, perhaps regret, perhaps not. Daniel realized then that whatever happened next, he would have to live with it. He saved the file and shut down his laptop. The plan was ready. The choice was coming. And for the first time since the betrayal, Daniel felt prepared to face it. The call came late in the afternoon, just as the light outside began to soften. Daniel watched the phone vibrate on the table before answering. He already knew who it was. Marcus did not waste time with greetings. His voice sounded calm, practiced, almost friendly. He spoke as if nothing serious had happened, as if weeks of silence had not passed between them. He said the situation had grown uncomfortable. He said investors were nervous. He said it would be better for everyone if things were settled quietly. Daniel listened without interrupting. He stared at the wall, at a small crack he had never noticed before, and felt how far away Marcus already was. "I can make this easier for you," Marcus said. "We can say it was a misunderstanding, poor communication. We move on." Daniel felt a slow tightening in his chest. Marcus was offering an escape, but it was an escape that erased the truth. It would leave Daniel marked by doubt forever, even if his name was never spoken again. "You planned this," Daniel said calmly. Marcus paused. "Just for a second." "I made decisions," he replied. "Someone had to." The words confirmed everything Daniel already knew. After the call ended, Daniel sat still for a long time. The file waited on his laptop, complete and silent. He thought about how close he was to the edge. One action could change both their lives. There would be no return once it began. He stood and walked outside. The air was cool, the street busy. People laughed, argued, hurried past him. None of them knew about the choice forming inside his mind. That felt strange and grounding at the same time. Daniel thought about revenge the way it had lived inside him these past weeks. At first it had been sharp and bright, a promise of relief. Then it had grown heavier, darker, demanding more of him. He understood now that revenge did not end pain. It only redirected it. He did not want to become a man shaped by bitterness. Back inside his apartment, Daniel opened the laptop again. He reviewed the file one last time. Every document was clear, every detail verified. There were no insults, no emotional notes, no accusations, just facts arranged in quiet order. He hesitated before sending it. In that pause, memories rose up. Marcus laughing over cheap food in the early days. Marcus shaking Daniel's hand when their first big deal closed. The version of Marcus that once existed, or maybe never had. Daniel understood then that the man on the other end of the phone truly believed he was right. Marcus believed success justified damage. That belief would never change. Daniel pressed send. He did not attach his name. The file went to the compliance. Board 2, the investigators already circling the company. No announcement followed. No dramatic reveal. Just a quiet shift, like pressure building underground. Days passed. Daniel waited. The first sign came when Marcus stopped calling. Then emails began moving through the industry. Carefully worded, vague whispers of internal review. Leadership restructuring, temporary leaves. Daniel watched from a distance. He did not comment. He did not explain. He let the truth travel on its own. Weeks later, an official letter arrived. The investigation had concluded. Daniel was cleared of wrongdoing. His name, once tied to suspicion, was formally removed. The language was stiff, professional, but it was enough. He felt relief, but it was muted. Victory did not arrive with fireworks. It came quietly, like the release of a long-held breath. Marcus resigned soon after. No charges were announced publicly. No press followed. Just a quiet exit and a closed door. Some people speculated. Others moved on quickly. The world rarely lingers. Daniel expected satisfaction. He waited for it. It never fully came. What arrived instead was exhaustion. He realized how much of himself he had poured into the need for balance. How much sleep he had lost. How many moments he had spent replaying words that could never be taken back. One evening, Daniel packed the remaining documents into a box and sealed it. He placed it in the back of a closet and shut the door. The chapter was finished. Even if the scars remained, he started walking again, long routes through the city. He noticed small things he had ignored before. The rhythm of traffic, the sound of wind between buildings, the quiet strength of routine. A former client reached out cautiously at first. Then another. Work returned slowly, not with the same ambition, but with honesty. Daniel chose projects carefully. He chose people more carefully. Sometimes Marcus crossed his mind, not with anger, but with distance. Daniel wondered if Marcus felt regret or only frustration at being stopped. He would never know, and he no longer needed to. Months later, Daniel stood in a new office space, smaller but brighter. Sunlight filled the room. He unpacked a single-framed photo from a box. It was an old picture from the early days of the company, before everything changed. He studied it for a moment, then placed it face down in a drawer. The past did not need to be erased. It only needed to be set aside. Daniel understood now that revenge had tempted him to become something narrow and sharp. Choosing restraint had cost him the fantasy of satisfaction. But it had saved him from becoming trapped in someone else's shadow. He had not destroyed Marcus, he had freed himself. As he locked the office door that evening and stepped into the fading light, Daniel felt something steady settle inside him. Not triumph, not bitterness. Clarity. And for the first time since the betrayal, that was enough.